150 years ago, a pioneer Moses named Brigham Young proclaimed, "This is the place." 128 years ago, the Central Pacific and Union Pacific Railroads echoed that prophetic declaration. In the last week of June 1997, the National Railway Historical Society called to the world, "Come to the tops of the mountains where Salt Lake City is indeed the place." Our story begins with the arrival of the famous Union Pacific 844 into Utah, pulling triple E9 power and 18 assorted equipment and passenger cars. Arriving in Salt Lake City, the passengers were anxious to get settled into an air-conditioned hotel room, eat some real food, and get this convention on the road. Day one brought a trip to the Mountain Valley community of Heber, Utah, home of the historic Heber Valley Railroad. This line first began operation in 1899 and was acquired 1 year later by Rio Grande Western. In 1920, the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad purchased the operation. The next decade brought an unlikely title as the nation's #1 hauler of sheep. But by the 60s, the sheep were long gone, and highway improvements between Heber and Provo, Utah, brought a sudden end to the people traffic. However, it was not long before the vision of a scenic steam passenger service was made a reality. After a shaky beginning and an uncertain future, the railroad experienced a second rebirth through incredible devotion and work by local citizens and just plain people that love the smell of coal smoke and steam. Today's Heber Valley Railroad proudly operates a reconditioned coal-fired steam engine originally built in 1907 for the Union Pacific. It pulls several open-air cars, a concession car, and a reconditioned caboose that would be the envy of any railroad in the country. The views from the rail are some of the best in America and well worth frequent trips.
Yeah, the Reading Line's diamond is, I'll show you before you take pictures. The Reading Line's diamond is original, and I put the others on as I got them, and a lot of these don't exist anymore, such as the Carroll Park and Western in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. That's where the movie of Molly Maguire's was filmed. That was flooded out by Hurricane Agnes in 1972. And then here is the Steamtown patch from when it was from Bellows Falls, Vermont, before it moved down to Scranton.
10 p.m.
Day 2 brought a double-headed event with some of the participants traveling to Ely, Nevada to visit the Nevada Northern Railway, while others spent the day traveling the Provo sub on UP's E9-powered Streamliner train. The original railroad running south from Salt Lake City was the Utah Southern, which built and operated down to the now ghost town called Juab in northeastern Juab County. This road, built by the Mormon communities along the way and financed in some degree by equipment and materials from Union Pacific, meandered through the Salt Lake Valley, then up over the point of the mountain marking the Salt Lake, Utah County line, then down into Utah County. When taken over by Union Pacific, the route was upgraded continuously so that it's now been built and maintained to heavy mainline standards. As the narrow-gauge DNRGW was building towards Salt Lake in the 1880s, the surveyors plotted the straightest possible route between Provo and Salt Lake. Consequently, this route is much straighter and almost level, resulting in much faster transport. Union Pacific's added tonnage is in no way coming close to reaching the capacity of this line. The stretch from Mount to Lehigh is still owned by UP and mainly used for storage. There is some limited UP local traffic between Lehigh and Provo. The secondary main line between Springville and Lyndyl has not seen a passenger train in over 80 years. For those that chose the Streamliner, they had the opportunity of witnessing history in the making and be a part of it.
Oh, I don't know where you're going.
Anything you hear? Full
The second group that day chose a visit to Ely, Nevada, home of the Nevada Northern Railway. To get to Ely, you drive west on I-80 past the famous Bonneville Salt Flats, turn left at the Big Cowboy, go past the secret Air Force UFO landing base, drive down the straight road where the deer and sheep play, which leads to a straight road, which leads to another straight road, which leads to, you guessed it, another longer and straighter road. Soon you'll find an intersection that twice a day turns into Nevada gridlock. That's 2 cars at one intersection at one time. Soon you'll come to the town of Ely, Nevada, home of the only stoplight in the county, but large enough to feel a need to name their station East Ely. We don't know if there's a West Ely. Nonetheless, this is the home of one of railroad's best-kept secrets. The trips to Keystone, to the west of Ely, and to the north on the Highline route were pulled by high-stepping Baldwin 460 number 40 and the Alco 280 number 93. The management provided a number of freight and passenger coaches in various consists for a real variety of photo run-bys.
That's a lot of work. Oh, no, now you're not by yourself anything, are you? Oh, boy. That's a real challenge.
Yeah, you do bearings or you all about. You know all about bearings and all of it. Yeah, we have people in our group.
Day 3 brought a trip to Railroad Mecca, the Promontory Summit, and also the Ogden Union Station Museum. No railroad convention or railfan trip to Utah would be complete without a trek to the Golden Spike National Historic Site at Promontory Summit, where East truly does meet West. Most railroad fans are knowledgeable how the Central Pacific building from the west and the Union Pacific from the east joined together on May the 10th, 1869. The on-site visit brought the event into sharp focus by actually seeing the terrain, rail beds, and witnessing a reenactment of the ceremony of the joining of the rails. Of interest was to observe several places where Union Pacific and Central Pacific graders built rail beds side by side.
Every morning at 7 o'clock, there's 20 terriers on the rock. The boss comes along and he says, be still. Put all your power in the cast steel drill and drill ye terriers drill. Drill ye terriers drill. Work all day without sugar in your tea, working on the UP Railway. The boarding boss went to town one day to get some sugar for to sweeten our tea. The cost of sugar had gone up of late. Forever after that we took our tea straight. Drill ye terriers drill. Drill ye terriers drill. Work all day without sugar in your tea, working on the UP Railway. The boss was a fine man all around. He married a lady 6 feet round. She baked good bread, she baked it well, but she baked it hard as the hobs of hell. Drill ye terriers drill. Drill ye terriers drill. Work all day without sugar in your tea, working on the UP Railway. Our new foreman was Dan McCann. By God, he was a blame mean man. Last week a premature blast went off, and a mile in the air went Big Jim Goff. Drill ye terriers drill. Drill ye terriers drill. Work all day without sugar in your tea, working on the UP Railway. The next time payday came around, Jim's pay $1 short was found. When asked what for, came this reply: you was docked for the time you was up in the sky. Drill ye terriers drill. Drill ye terriers drill. Work all day without sugar in your tea, working on the UP Railway.
The date is May 10th, 1869. The place is Promontory Summit, Utah. An unlikely spot for the culmination of an undertaking that will mark the ending of the Old West and the beginning of the new. But they have come. The famous and the unknown, the wealthy and the poor, the laborer and his boss. The Chinese from the west and the Irish from the east, mingling with the local residents in a strange communion. The gathering is both festive and anxious, awaiting that moment of miracle, when a common railroad spike, driven into an ordinary railroad tie, will link a continent. A gentle breeze is blowing under an almost cloudless sky. The thermometer on the shaded side of the Central Pacific Telegraph car registers 69 degrees. Above the babble of voices can be heard the soft hissing of the steam locomotives, which herald the beginning of a new era. A polished tie of laurel wood has been placed in its ceremonial position by the construction superintendents of both railroads. And then Edgar Mills, a wealthy banker and friend of the Central Pacific Railroad officials, steps forward and signals for silence. And so a nation, as well as you spectators gathered here, await as the drama of men's hopes and prayers and dreams begins to unfold on this 10th day of May, 1869, and you are here.
From Promontory to the country, bulletin. Don't break the circuit. Keep quiet. When the last spike is driven, we will say done.
Out of there, Governor. Okay, Governor, smack it. Hit it.
Hit her right.
Oh, he missed. He missed the whole thing. Okay, Durant, give it a hit. Oh, he missed. Well, we'll both see who can drive a spike. Come and finish the job. How about this railroad? Oh, they got a worker that can do it. Hey!
Ogden, Utah became the main railroad center of the Mountain West, with Union Pacific coming in from the east, Southern Pacific from the west, OSL from the north, then continuing southward, the DNRGW from the east. The Ogden Union Depot is much the same as the original design and purpose. The depot and grounds have been designated as the official State Railroad Museum of Utah. On day 4, several local events kept conventioners busy. There were informative seminars in the hotel with knowledgeable speakers.
So I know there are some of you out there that have your hands on your 45s ready to say, why are you guys using tour operators, and why didn't you reserve tickets on this Tennessee Pass trip for NRHS members? My standard answer is going to be Econ 1, guys. This last trip was a $250,000 venture.
At the same time, a local club in the Salt Lake area called the Trackers sponsored a rail show complete with exhibits, booths, and a real live steam show. At an appointed hour, there was a whistle-blowing event. A voice that took part was an old friend of ours, the Union Pacific 833, which had been collecting pigeon droppings in the park for over 20 years. Another event was a ride on the Salt Lake, Garfield, and Western Railway. This railway, originally known as the Salt Lake and Los Angeles, was one of the easiest railroads ever to be built. It was constructed straight and level west along the Salt Lake Meridian, with no curves at all until a Y was built at the edge of the Great Salt Lake. When it became apparent that the pike was never going anywhere near Los Angeles, it terminated at Salt Air Resort, a pavilion and recreational center. It began life as a steam road, then was electrified and spent most of its existence as a fast interurban track, taking vacationers between Salt Lake City and Salt Air. During its peak, it ran 20 trains a day in each direction. In the last 40-plus years since the demise of the Salt Air Pavilion, the Pike is a diesel-operated freight road servicing a number of industries along its line. A salt plant out west near the Great Salt Lake has quit operating, so trains don't run out to the lake anymore, although the tracks are still in place. Later that evening, a banquet was held with over 450 people in attendance. After a great dinner, attendees were treated to the off-the-cuff humor of one of America's most envied railroaders, Steve Lee, engineer of the famous Union Pacific 844.
Started our journey out here in the midst of the G8 Summit in Denver. And I was sitting here at the table noticing there are some parallels to that. The hotel we were at in Denver was pretty heavily populated by some folks from some other country who had come along to do some protesting or demonstrating or something. So I noticed when I walked through the lobby of the hotel in Denver and when I walked through the lobby of this one, you hear strange dialects. And you see colorful costumes. Lots of patches, hats, stuff like that. But you guys are carrying cameras instead of detonators, and that makes me feel a lot better. And you had seminars on things like how to run an excursion, not 40 ways to turn a Holiday Inn bedspread into a garment.
Day 5 brought a ride on the 844. The route was originally surveyed and built by Mormon pioneers as the Utah Central Railroad. When the transcontinental line bypassed Salt Lake City, the experienced Mormon road graders quickly built the grade from Ogden southward 38 miles to the capital city. The Utah Central was included with a number of other lines that were included in the Oregon Short Line, later taken over by Union Pacific. The line from Ogden northward was originally the narrow-gauge Utah Northern Railroad, built to serve the towns and cities of northern Utah and southern Idaho. It was also eventually extended to Butte, Montana, to take the rich ore from the many mines there.